Hello, Deep Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. If you're joining us anywhere other than twitch.tv/deepmindfulness, well, come along and join us here. Folks, I have one pressing question. You may guess it already. You may have known what I might already have said. You, my friend, are a mind reader. The question is this: where do we find you today? This is part of our early opening ritual. I am in Brooklyn. That's exactly where I am. It says so right here on the screen. Where are folks coming from? Where is everybody as we begin to trickle in for our Good Friday fun times? Excited about Friday. Friday is where we go a little freestyle. Although we did say we're going to do a certain meditation, so it's going to be a combination of freestyle and of specific directed practice. So where are folks joining us from? I realize I have a counter here who says how many people are on the stream, and it's incredibly slow. I looked at it the other night, like I was walking by the computer, it was like midnight, and the counter said 11 people. I was like, there are not 11 people on the stream that ended 5 hours ago. So okay, folks, so here's the general breakdown. This is how it goes. These are the rules. No, just kidding. So what we do is we will... Gene, good morning from upstate New York. You're doing a little traveling. Good. I'm glad you're getting away from the weekend. Couch locked in Carlsbad. Friday vibes of exhaustion. Yes, exactly. I know the feel. I actually got a remarkable depth of sleep last night, so I'm much less sleepy than one might be on a normal Friday. Although I work from home, so it's sort of like, my commute is not 45 minutes, it's 45 seconds. So where are folks coming from is the first thing. That's what I want to know. I refuse to work unless I know where people are coming from. That's my rule. No, I'm just kidding. So let me know where you're coming from, and then we will practice for 25 minutes. I can't believe that's possible. We meditate for 25 minutes. No, it's actually really easy, and especially if you're new or have never meditated, you'll be surprised at how easy it actually is. 2020 CL from the UK, welcome. Good to have you here. Rory here from Kingston. Joe Explicit is back. Guten Tag from Switzerland here. Excellent. We have Nick here from Sweden. You're here from Switzerland, and I think that they're, my American geography tells me that they're actually just one place, so that's great. You guys are just next door neighbors. Alex Rainleaf, hello. Alex from Portland. Hopefully you're doing okay and staying safe over there in Portland. I've been in the news, but I know that the news is very, they don't tell the whole story. Speaking of Portland, by the way, P.S., friends with a friend of mine was the person who brought the Stumptown coffee to New York, which was very cool. Before I even knew what that was, I was like, oh, that sounds like a weird name for a coffee. Now it's everywhere, god damn it. We have chocolate and IKEA. Okay, good. That's a good thing to remember. Sweden, chocolate, IKEA. And PewDiePie, that's your other, it's your big, famous, export of a person, at least right now in this world. Okay, so, what else? Okay, so folks, also what I want to know, this is another key important thing, is anyone here, is it your first time ever meditating? You can tell us either now or after the meditation, but do tell us. We'd like to welcome you. And if you're a relative newcomer to the community, let us know, and we will greet you thusly. So we're going to be meditating, and today, particularly what we're going to be doing is focusing, it's part 2 of our exploration of the experience of self. And today we're going to be looking at what sometimes is called non-self, but really people can get all spun in their head, like, what is non-self? What does it mean? What is it about? Blah, blah, blah. Anything that isn't the self, we're going to count in the category of non-self. So that would mean anything, if you look around, these are all experiences of non-self. But that's also relevant to the sort of what we hear when we talk about some of the sort of mystical states of like self and non-self, this kind of thing. So it's actually very relevant. It's not just a play on words or something like that. So Last time we looked at looking at the experience of self, you can do it right now, as this sort of central thing that is experiencing the world. And what can happen, and a number of people reported this, is as we start to notice the experience of self, the me experience, it can feel stressful, it can feel anxiety provoking. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing something a little bit different, still working with that experience of the center, but going from there to actually use that as a way to relieve anxiety, to relieve stress in that way. So hopefully that sounds like fun. Now, one key here is I'm going to encourage everyone to sit in complete and total stillness, which sounds insane, but it is 100% possible. Now, there are exceptions, and I'm going to explain those exceptions after I drink from this comically large beaker of water. So warm and toasty. So, excuse me. So, I'm going to encourage you to be completely still. The reason for this is that it kind of wipes the palate clean of all the activity that could be happening in the body, in the mind, etc. So, what I used to say is if you can train the body to be still, you can train the mind to be still, but the mind doesn't have to be still. So I realized that was a little bit of a red herring, because the mind does not have to be still. The mind can be crazy active, and that's totally fine. That's true. Joe Explicit knows that this is warm bathroom water. That's exactly right. That's the only place in the house that actually has hot tap water. Oh, we have a new follow here from Tony Baloney's. Hello. Thank you, Tony Baloney's. Very good to have you here. Very kind of you to follow. We're glad that you are with us, as always. We've been waiting this whole time. What the hell, dude? No, just kidding. Okay, so I feel like I go into characters and I like mess with people all the time, and I feel like I always have to say, just kidding, because I feel like people don't understand. Or maybe I'm just not funny. That's probably more likely. Okay, so beep up, beep up, beep up. We're explaining. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to stay in stillness. The way that you do that is by arranging the body well, so you don't have to use muscles to like hold the body in place. Sometimes people think they have to stretch their neck and this kind of, stretch out really long. You don't have to do that. What I would highly, highly suggest that you do, wherever you're sitting, sitting so that your knees are lower than your hips, sitting so that you're effectively balancing. You can feel the balance of the entire torso. If you're laying down, you can also do that, but if you're sleepy, that could be a problem. So I usually sit because it's a nice balance of resting and being upright. So finding a nice comfortable position, doing a little stretching, getting the body kind of in alignment, and then finding a balance of the torso, and then finding a balance of the head on the torso. And that's mainly it. That's the whole jam. If your knees are not lower than your hips, it's very hard to do what I just described. And you're now in jail. You cannot move your body once we ring the bell. Except that's totally not true. You can totally move the body. It's fine. Here are the reasons. When you can move the body is if it's so uncomfortable, or whatever's happening, the itch or something like that is so uncomfortable, it's distracting from the meditation, and you just can't work through it. You've tried waiting a minute or something like this, and you just can't. And so you just go ahead and scratch the thing. Just do it slowly. Just go very slowly. Feel it. Notice. Put the hand back down, etc. Another thing to keep in mind is if you start to get overwhelmed, it's very important that you actually just make any adjustments you need to. Of course, do those slowly as well. Make sure you're paying attention as you do it, but human beings have way more of a history of trauma than we tend to think they do. We tend to think, no, I'm good, I worked through my stuff, or I didn't have any stuff, or whatever. So if you start to feel like you're getting overwhelmed, feel free to make an adjustment. Sometimes you'll be meditating, and this is a different thing, but sometimes fear will just arise. You're like, it's so weird, I'm floating or something, and then fear will arise. That's actually normal. It's not a big deal. But if you find that sort of overwhelm is starting to creep in, deal with it early. Make an adjustment, open the eyes, let the eyes rest on a single point, or just stop meditating. All very good options. So now the next part is where we actually do a meditation. I was trying to figure out if you were allowed to swear in, I forgot what circumstance it was. It's like, can you swear if you beep yourself out? If you're like, holy, I can't even believe it, etc. Can you beep yourself and then that's allowed? And they said no. I think it was involving children, so that's probably better not than. So folks, here we go. Finding that nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. And then when you're there, we'll begin. Holy moly. Exactly. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. Each time we arrive at a meditation, we arrive at the momentum of all of the previous moments. And often simply noticing that momentum is enough to allow the unconscious parts to dissolve. We can often notice that momentum by simply paying attention to the sensations of this particular moment. So, once again, taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just noticing the body rise and fall. Noticing what the mind does with this activity. Is it easy or challenging? And that challenge, any difficulty that arises, the mind flickering or being a little distracted, that's a little momentum that's pulling in the opposite direction. So simply noticing that as you observe the body breathing. We'll begin by physically relaxing the body, so going ahead and physically letting go in the body. You may have a sense that you've already let go physically. The body's already relaxed. But it's been shown that we can physically relax more than we can even physically feel. So beyond what you can even detect, keep physically relaxing the body, even if you don't notice any physical change. Relaxing at the level of the bones and the fascia, which attaches the muscle to the bones themselves. And getting an overall sense of all body sensations. So we're not looking to take each sensation one by one and put them together, but rather get an overall capture. What is the experience of body in this particular moment? And this requires a different part of the mind than the part that focuses on detail. This is using awareness, the soft, open experiencing of our current experience. So each time we notice anything particular in the body, so if I say the following words, the sensations in the left hand, often the mind will simply jump to these sensations, the details of the palm, tips of the fingers. Anytime the mind jumps to any particular sensation, we're just going to introduce those sensations to all of the sensations around them. The sensations where the hand is resting, the rest of the torso, and eventually the whole body. So we're drawn to a particular sensation and introducing that particular sensation to the whole. If we're not drawn to any particular sensation, just staying with the overall experience of the body. And of course, at times, distraction arises. The good news is that distraction is simply another particle. We hear a sound, or the mind thinks a thought. In other words, zooms into some other sense activity. So it's not a problem. We simply introduce this particle to the overall experience. Either the overall experience of the body, or if it's easy enough for us today, the overall experience of all sensing. Noticing how any particle has around it all of the other material, all of the other sense data. They're not actually separate. The mind simply zoomed into one part. But like an electrical current It can simply move from the sensations of something particular and expand out, conducted along the other sensations until it's spread out, diffused through the entire either body, or if we're more familiar with all of the sensing activity in this moment. If we'd like to use mental labels, if it would help the mind stay more stable, each time we notice any particle, we can simply label that part. And as we open up to and explore the overall experience, we can call this whole. So in the mind, it might sound something like this. Whole, whole, part, whole, whole. You get the idea. In this way, using the mental labels like we're simply playing a game. When we come in contact with a part, we simply tag it with this word. Soak in, allow the transition to include it with all of the other sense data, and then when we find a general sense of the overall, naming it whole. And if we find the mental labels simply distracting, we can just let those go. Doing the same process without the words. And whatever's happening, making sure to include that as part of this process. So it's not just parts of the body, it's distractions or even our assessment. How is this going so far? It's going wonderfully, or it's going terribly. Introducing that sense experience to the rest of our senses. Any sense of craving or aversion. Wanting or not wanting. Any mental audio. Any pain or discomfort in the body. Now getting a general sense of all sensing that's occurring in this particular moment. One big open capture of all sense data. Effectively, our entire experiential universe in this moment. All thought, emotion, body sensation, the darkness of closed eyes, any sound. And of course, each snapshot will very quickly degrade, succumbing to the general impermanence of experiencing. But that's okay, we'll just take another snapshot. And within this, I'd like you to consider the experience of a self. The thing we usually refer to as me, I. And usually the self is experienced as though it were occurring in the center of all experiencing. And as we do this, noticing what that feels like. It typically feels like there's a dense center. Like there's a core of experiencing. And a quality of this core is that it calls itself me. It's usually quite convincing. Even now it might say to you, no, this is me. This is the self. This very strange kernel of information. There is a self that exists, and I am it. But noticing too that this sense of a self, this core, feels much like a particle, much like a piece, rather than a whole. This is the way the mind often separates out the world. There's self at the inside, and everything else is the outside. go ahead and once more introduce this particle to the overall. And what we might find, what's not uncommon, is that the sense of self has a kind of gravitational pull. It keeps pulling us back to this sense of some kind of middle. And often introducing this to the overall experience can feel like we're pulling outward, as though we're fighting that gravity. So what I'd like you to do is to consider this gravitational pull, this central experience, and ask your senses the question, if this is the core, this is the middle, what is it pulling from? What is the most subtle experience at the far outer edges that is finding its center here? So we're allowing the pulling. We're not fighting the gravity of the self-experience. We're simply feeling the very subtle outer atmosphere of what it is that is pulled in. And it may or may not be the case for you, but checking in to see if either one of these experiences, this self as center or this sense of the outer atmosphere, which one is more satisfying, which one is more relieving. Often when we feel overwhelmed or feel a great deal of some emotional intensity or even a pain, it's as though the mind simply shrinks around that experience, crowding out everything else. And if we want to broaden our perspective, it can feel like we're trying to force ourselves to pull outward, trying to get ourselves to zoom to include more data, fighting this pull of the mind. But we simply need to allow that pulling and recognize that it's pulling from, it's collapsing down out of, all of this open, spacious material. The compression of self or overwhelm or difficulty or pain. This compression is showing us the expansion. It's showing us the path to this soft, kind, open awareness. Staying with the practice. Staying in stillness. Allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes, eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point as they fully open. And noticing now with the eyes open, often the body is filled with sensations of wanting to move, wanting to adjust the posture before the practice ends. So noticing these as particles pulling from the overall. Noticing the pull of time, the pull of narrative of self. Perhaps a part of us waiting for the bell to ring. And if these are a problem, we're simply training ourselves to have these particles show us the path to the overall. The specificity and solidity of seeing. Being a particle that can show us the same path. And in this way, allowing this moment to be the great teacher that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. Lovely. So, what was that like? What happened and what do you like now? Making any adjustments you need to allow the body to be comfortable. Unfolding any sleepy limbs. Drinking any hot water you have nearby. Beep up, 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 beep up. What am I thinking here? Okay, yeah. So what was that like? So part of practice, part of developing our meditation skills is speaking about what happened and or writing down what happened, sharing it with other people. I mean, for me, it's the most interesting part because the primary tool I have as a teacher is the voice of, the practitioner. So what was that experience like? Beep up, 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 up. And then to describe that for others, it's also very cool because you get to see other people's experiences. You get to see what it was like for them. And that shared experience gives a kind of overall level of insight. Insight and insight meditation, which is another term for what mindfulness is is moment by moment just knowing what this particular moment is, and over time insight stacks up and then delivers to the system wisdom. It's not something that we can just get on our own, but just by observing the present moment it sort of delivers. We have a kind of collective wisdom which we gain through talking about our experience. So also we have a voice chat here, which, for a long time we did it on Discord, but it was so glitchy. I forget what the problems were. We really struggled for that to work, but I know that's standard for live streams, is to do it on Discord. But let's see here. I'm going to, oops, that's not the thing I want. There we go. If anyone wants to jump on to Zoom, we can hear your voice, see your face if you'd prefer, if you'd like, and then we can I can answer questions in more detail than text ever will allow. Okay, so we have a couple comments popping in here. Joe Explicit, that was a trip. I feel high. I'm so mushy. Yeah. So there can be a sense that the thing that holds us together, the sort of solidity, part of the mind, part of that is the mind holding material down, which is a lot of work. It's like in Buddhism they talk about that, like everything is, or like so much of our experience is clinging. And it's not just like, oh, I really want to get the new iPhone or whatever, which is what the new one's supposed to come out in like next month or something. So it's like all of a sudden we'll notice all this clinging. Even hearing that, for me, I'm like, oh, a new iPhone. So it's not even that level of clinging. It's even the level of clinging of like the mind holding reality together all the time, like struggling, like, oh, I've got to hold this world. So as we sort of connect with this experience of the overall, that tends to break down and get softer and mushier or that kind of thing. And that can feel very relieving. The system can be like, oh, thank God. So there's this kind of existential break that the system can take. Joe Explicit also says, I found the labeling quite helpful. Excellent. Okay, so I wasn't, I didn't do a big introduction on labeling, but labeling can be very helpful just to keep the system kind of ongoing. Spotting the part and putting it in the whole was helpful to keep the whole. Yeah, exactly. And so part of a lot of this training is showing the system that the part can show us a path to the whole, rather than it feeling like they're fighting each other, that the one is actually, they depend on each other in a certain way. And that gravitational thing, that sense that, okay, well, this is pulling to the middle, I have to pull awareness out, and that actually we can rely on that gravity as a thing to show us this outer experience, is a, I don't know if I'd say it's a trick, but it's something that I found was really, really helpful, especially when I find myself in overwhelm, is that the centrality of this experience, it's like I can't get the mind to get out of this thing, is actually showing me this larger experience. I'm not sure if it requires that you have a fair amount of experience with awareness ahead of time, like you've navigated awareness as a practice. This is actually a good question. So if folks are not really used to doing that, like connecting with awareness as something that they've done like dozens of times, was that available to connect with that sort of central thing and then connect with what it's pulling from the outside, or the experience of it pulling from a larger container, you could say. Joe Explicit says, throughout this, I found myself, my center in my plexus. I let myself in this gravitational pull, and my wholeness became super light. Excellent. Okay, good to hear. Very nice. You might also notice, if anyone was here on Wednesday when we did the self-experience, a lot of it was like looking inward towards the self-experience. We started there and we kind of ended there. At the end, we sort of introduced today's practice a little bit, but that inner coreness felt it can create the sense of a lot of pressure, like we're sort of like the self is like it can produce this sense of anxiety. So today's practice was the opposite of that, and often people report that this kind of practice feels much more chill and spacious in that way. Very peaceful today. Light breeze and sun on my face, some distant car traffic, but not a distraction, just part of the experience. Lovely. I'm glad to hear that. It's funny, I was actually guiding, I think it was this meditation, or actually it might have been anyway, I was guiding a meditation recently, and my dog is actually usually very good about not whining. But in that meditation, this was in a class, so it's a class of, it was just, there was a heightened potential for like concern of like, well, no, what are people, what are people going to think? And the dog was just like, during the whole thing, or like for a big portion of it. And it was just very interesting to watch the self like clamp around the sound, and the sound be very particular, and then introducing it to the thing, and happening over and over and over again. So, excellent. Lots of fun. Annie says, I took a week off from my practice, and it was hard to jump back in. Well, I wonder, it might be the case that taking a week off might have been the right decision to make. But I don't know. We can talk about it. Distracted and fidgety, but it was nice to say hi to an old friend again. Yay! That's great. I'm glad that you're able to reconnect in that way. And it's always, I mean, we don't start at zero again. That's the sort of nature of insight, is having had an experience over and over and over again. The system knows the experience. And I think specifically for you, Annie, this is something we've talked a little bit about, but, you know, like if we say something like, you know, I don't have the sort of calmness of mind that I've had in the past. If you ask your senses, you can ask now, because right now you're looking at a screen and it's fairly active, so of course it's, you know, it's going to be a little less sort of calm or you know, organized. What's the word I'm looking for? Like stable than in a meditation. So you can say, okay, what's the thing that I don't have again? And the system will say, okay, it's that stability. And what you can actually do in the same way is use the not this, or use the rule of contrast to show you the thing that is not there. That's sort of what we're doing with that core center thing, is what is this not? This is not the overall. And it shows us this sort of outer experience as it, you know, that shows us this inward pulling quality, which is a good way to trick the mind into observing which is not there. So if you've had deeper meditation experiences, just having those experiences is often enough to guide the system. We don't have to see them in the foreground again for them to be with us in the process. Nick says, very chill, too sleepy, so spaced out a bit. Everything was kind of floating around. Sounds nice. No unusual fixed center, and more just whole. Lovely. Or noticing context with fuzzy borders between senses. That's great. And sort of noticing the non-solidity of our senses can be very relieving in general. Alex Rainleaf says, brilliant. Oh, lovely. Well, thank you for that. I was able to identify parts of various types and label them, and then expand back out to the whole. So I just want to also mention, you said various parts. So when we talk about the multiple self model, this is also something we can do, is we can notice any part of us that's the part that, you know, always feels hopeless, or the part that feels like, I have to achieve, I have to move forward, like these larger, more complex objects, mind objects, you could call them, selves, you could call them. And introduce those to the whole experience. This is one of the things that a self tends to do. Any one of these selves is say, I am the one and only view of reality. And so we're taking that sort of centrality and then introducing it to the whole in this way. So then transitioning to looking at the self as a part, I immediately notice that the sense of contraction and even relative discomfort. Yeah, it's helpful to show the system over and over and over again. It is uncomfortable to fight for and defend a self. We think it's like there's such a strong pull to it that we think we like want to do it. Like, you know, we see, you know, social media is an example of this. We see stuff on Instagram, we're like, oh my God, like this person looks like this and this looks like this, and my identity, when I think about it from as like this other people looking at my page, like what do they think? And it feels so compelling that it feels like there's a drive that we have to do it. But if we actually look at the experiencing of that, it can feel like, ugh, what a yucky thing. I was just sort of looking and, oh, this is a lovely picture, and the mind just goes down this whole, you know, route sometimes. Just as an example, I'm sure not everybody has that experience. Contradiction, discomfort. I conjured the self by saying me in my head. The whole felt much more easeful and expansive, and definitely where I'd like to spend much more of my time in the future. And this is, we talked about this last time, but we can cultivate that whole experience, this sort of open awareness, and I often will say kind awareness, because that openness can feel welcoming, like it just welcomes whatever comes into it, and it has this sort of pull to it. It just sort of loves and accepts any sensory data that arises. For some people that's natural. For some people we have to cultivate that by adding like the slightest drop of kindness. And we can start to train the system to treat that as ourself. That's the me that I'm referring to. That's in Hinduism that's called true self. And that's it's a helpful structure because it doesn't have a lot of the usual pitfalls of our sort of ordinary central experience of self. Okay, awesome. So now Joe Explicit says, Alex Rainleaf, I totally get what you mean by my experience was by saying whole. This word really resonated with me exactly as you're describing there. Sweet, nice little experiential rhyming from one person to the next. I'll also mention that beep pop is wait, what was I going to say related to this? Oh, it's funny, when I started giving the instruction, there's always this. Oh, we have another follow here from Curio Wizard. Curio Wizard, lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for the follow. Glad you're here with us as always. Again, just real quick, if it's anyone's first time ever meditating or first time to the community, let us know in the chat. We have a special way of welcoming you. So, beep up, calculating. Oh yeah, so there's this, like, I remember guiding a meditation once, and it was just like there was someone there who was just sort of in a very immature experience, not like they're a bad person or something, but a lot of immaturity was arising. And anytime I said any word that had any sort of innuendo to it, they'd just like start cracking up, and it was fine, but it was like, I was like, oh my God. So sometimes when I'm guiding a meditation and I'll say, okay, we're going to talk about part and whole, like I'm always concerned that people are going to be like not understand that I'm using the word with a W. And so I sometimes feel like I need to explain that, but everyone got it, so that's not a problem. Exactly. So, okay. So folks, any other questions, comments, reports, difficulties? Oh, big announcement here. P.S. Okay. So there's a conversation happening that is very exactly. That's very exciting in my mind. So folks probably don't know, not that you're like paying attention to my schedule, but I do improv rehearsal once a week with a bunch of friends, other fellow people doing improv. And as I'm doing it, I'm often sitting there going like, this is so much fun. Like, it's so weird to me that we can't share this with other people. Like we'll do a show, like if we want to do a show and people will see the show. This group has never done a show, but we could do a show and people would see that. I was like, yeah, but this is really good quality. Like, this is really fun. It's like quirky and we're figuring it out and we're learning. And I actually find that more interesting than like, oh, I'm going to a show. And so the idea was, and I want to hear what people think about this, the idea was to actually host that on this channel and have that be another program that happens. It would probably be Thursday nights, East Coast time, 6 p.m. And it would just be us having a rehearsal. So we'd be there with a coach and he would be doing exercises and different things, and we would just be chit-chatting in that way. So I have a little bit of a curiosity how we actually interact with you if you're there, because usually we don't have a group watching or being there. So that's a question, but we can figure that out over time. That's not that big of a deal. But the question is, would that be interesting, is to watch a group of people basically make fools of themselves and try to, work through improvised comedy routines with you as we're sitting here sort of figuring things out. Curio says, it was my first time here, but just to listen. Oh, excellent. We have a first-timer, folks. All right, so we have a tradition here of whenever it's anyone's first time here or first time meditating, we just spam the chat with emojis here. Folks, please welcome our friend here. I was going to say Curio George. No, Curio Wizard. Welcome. So good to have you here, as always. Thank you for coming. It's nice to have you. Good times. Thank you, my friend. And as always, lovely to see you here. Thank you. Middleditch and Schwartz, yeah, that was very good. I enjoyed that very much. I was going to say, I know those guys, but it's not. It's a different team that also did a similar thing here. So I like this, guys. So I want to instate this so we don't have to explain every time. I like this as a new tradition. If someone's new or new to meditating, and especially if they're new to meditating, just to like flood the thing with lots of love and lots of lots of support in that way. I feel like that's really sweet. Excellent. I feel like it's fun, right? That's what we're here for. It's having fun. Okay, cool. So if folks are interested in that, let me know. If maybe it's just a terrible idea, but I think we might try it out. We're going to see what people think, and we'll have like haha funny times. I'm afraid to announce the name because I think we've come up with a name, but I feel like I want to wait just because I'm so excited about it that I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I want to wait. But I'll tell you the name that we're probably not going to take, which I was pretty happy about for a while, and then I thought of another name, and I was like, I think this other name is better. The name we weren't going to take, or we probably are not going to take, is Clockwork Banana. And we're not going to take that, not because we don't love the name, but because we found a name that I think might be better, in my humble opinion. So we'll see. But let me know, maybe you like that name, Clockwork Banana. Maybe that's the one. We should actually vote on that. Maybe that's actually a good thing to do the first time when we do our first little sesh. Alex Rainleaf says, question. All right, here we go. This is good times. Question. Is this practice of expanding out into the whole a good go-to technique for dealing with overwhelm, or when one of the self parts makes itself super prominent? So that is an excellent question. Is this a go-to for general overwhelm? So Raquel and I were trying to create a formula for what is a compact way that you could say, when we're overwhelmed, this is the thing you could do if it's sadness overwhelm or anger overwhelm or like whatever kind of overwhelm it is, even physical overwhelm. If we call that one category, what is the strategy that we're going to tell people to do? So it's more of a category of strategies, and the way that we're describing it now is that whenever you feel overwhelmed, a couple things happen. One is that the difficulty gets bigger, but the gravitational pull of that pulls the mind in, and the mind shrinks around it. So there's a Zen saying that if you hold a leaf close enough to the eye, it seems bigger than the moon. And that's the general premise, is that our perspective has been radically sort of shifted. Oh, someone cheered 5.5 times. Thank you so much there, Nick. So nice of you. Appreciate that. So we have an altered perspective. So our general take is actually a little different than this. So this is an example that fits into our overall answer. So the overall answer is to expand perspective. Now, that could happen in many waves. We could zoom way, way, way into the sensation, just looking at the particles of what is it built out of, see, hear, feel, this kind of thing. We could zoom out like we did today, looking at the overall. That right now is one of my go-to, that as far as a meditation technique, that's kind of my personal go-to right now when the overwhelm occurs, to introduce it to a larger experience. The reason I talked about letting the gravity show us the pulling is because it can feel really hard, especially when we're overwhelmed, to pull out of that, to try to make the mind bigger and hold more material. It can feel very difficult. But if we use that gravitational pull, it's just pulling inwards and just a sense of what is it pulling from, that allows awareness to just, at the periphery, notice this very subtle or very more nuanced experience that is actually this overall experience. So as a meditation technique, yes, but expanding our perspective includes talking to someone else. This is what's happening. This is where it's happening in the body. It tends to have this gravitational pull, or it's sadness, or it's these thoughts are arising in this way. Writing, journaling, right? This can tend to give us more perspective. Going outside, looking around, right? Doing some physical fitness, so the sensations of the body, change what is sort of at the very core or at the center of our experiencing. So all of these are go-to strategies for overwhelm, but the core key is that we're expanding perspective. So hopefully that's more of a overall answer, and hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. That's our big answer, but this is the meditation technique itself is what I'm using lately. Jess BKK, good to. I don't know. Have we said hello today? I don't know if we've said hello today in the stream. sounds super fun, but it would be too late for Europe. Well, lucky for you, there's a replay if that's fun, and that way you can check it out in that super fun way. I also want to mention in the chat right now, if you're not watching the replay, there are 15 foundational guided meditations. These are the 15 meditations that we use with every single one of our new students, people in classes, anyone we work with. We're like, look, get good at these 15 practices, and then we have a shared language which we can then expand from there. So that is what we typically prescribe to every single person we begin working with. Yeah, lovely. Okay, folks, so I have a wish. Wish is a funny word. Wish. It's onomatopoetic to some degree. I think wish, like the sound wish, is onomatopoetic. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing more there. Okay, so I do have a wish for us. The wish is as follows. The wish is right now in this current moment to simply notice that reality has a kind of centered and solid feeling to it. Something that feels like a nice solid thing, and that's nice. That's lovely. It's lovely to feel the nice solidity of our experience. And in fact, let's go in that direction. This is even better. So to feel in this particular moment the solidity, the presentness, the particularness of this particular moment. And as we do that, to let that particularness show us a kind of vacuum from which this experience comes. This particularness and the solidness of our current experience is pointing to, by it not being that thing, is pointing to this spacious experience outside of it. This is sometimes called not this. There's this, and often this is pointing to not this. And so just to notice in this particular moment this, how lovely this particular experience is in its uniqueness, even if we're feeling a little crummy, even that unique quality is very specific, and there's something about that can be very satisfying. And noticing the pull of not this, the pull of the emptiness that is all around. And in this way, just knowing that we can bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Here we are sitting, hanging out, chit-chatting. This is just like lots of our life. And if we can practice here, of course we can practice anywhere. So my wish is that you're able to and interested in exploring this lovely world of the part and the whole all throughout your day. So folks, as always, practice well, take care of each other, have fun, and we'll see you in fewer than 72 hours. In other words, very, very soon. Bye.